Hi everyone and welcome to IORGcast. So this is just a little introduction about what you're gonna hear in these 30 minutes. So I'm interviewing Alfonso Aranda Arias. So he is a steering committee member of IORG for several years, and he's currently working on in Microsoft as a principal program manager. But actually, I personally met him before when he was working in IBM, and actually together we were sharing a lot about IORG and a lot of passion about why is so important, right, to identify the overload around us and how much more beneficial it is if we avoid to be overloaded. We use some techniques. So this is actually part of this story, or part of our meeting, and this webinar is actually connected with this. It's about what is information overload and how can you find options to avoid it and recognize it, right? So we talk mostly, the main topic is going beyond email. As you know, perhaps I've been not using emails for more than 6 years now. And also Alfonso is sharing is in his recent experience in Microsoft as well, how much less emails he's using and how many more different tools that are helping him to even be more productive, but at the same time to be less overloaded by this kind of inertia routine that everybody has nowadays. So it's interesting, the conversation you will find. We talk a lot of topics, from email to how to write emails, to why is it important to think before sending emails, to what is the consequence of not using it at all, and what are the opportunities to use it, and what actually is our world connected with the usage of email. So it's a fascinating conversation. Alfonso has a lot to share, so I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any particular question you would like to reach out to Alfonso, there are all the links in the description below. And please share or let us know a topic you would like, because IORGcasts are here to share expertise, and we can reach out to the best experts in this topic to share more with you. So thank you a lot, and enjoy. Hi everyone and welcome to IORGcast. Also this year in 2019 we will be here at least every month with many topics to fight information overload, to realize what is information overload, to learn about new tools perhaps. And today the first one is together with Alfonso, that is member of the steering committee of the IORG. So Alfonso, ciao, welcome. First time for you here, right?
Chai Lele, yeah, well, first time this year, I would say. So honored to be here with you.
And tell us something more about you to start, so that also folks have more idea about why you are in IORG, and
Sure. So
what you do.
I joined IORG as a steering committee member a couple of years, 1 year ago, or even longer. I got to IORG through volunteer work in IBM, where I used to work. I now work at Microsoft. I used to work at IBM. So as part of the corporate social responsibility and volunteer work, we were partnering with one line of work was to partner with key organizations doing work that impacts society at large, right? So IORG is one of these organizations, and it touches a particular field that interests me deeply, which is information overload, right? Because I am myself an information worker, like most of us, and so I need to. I'm really concerned, both at work and in my personal life, to be effective and efficient and reduce stress. So that's why I'm deeply interested in these matters. IORG addresses all of them, and therefore there was a match, of missions, and I was glad to participate, and glad that they included me in the team, and I can cooperate.
Yeah, but I would say nowadays almost everyone is an information worker in a corporate. Even if you're, I don't know, an engineer, or you are working on a particular product, so you are not passing messages, or they're not part of a specific process, but you still perhaps deal with your own attention you need to focus on a certain task, and you are bombarded by informations that are either your colleagues or people around you. You cannot be alone. Even who is just driving a truck and on the highway might actually be overloaded by notification and the GPS. And now one of the threats is reading mobiles while driving, right? That is actually as horrible as drinking while driving. And we don't notice it. We don't connect it as how important it is to know how to deal with those informations.
Exactly, and increasingly so, as you say, the workplace, regardless of the type of work. So your work doesn't necessarily have to be defined as computer work. Any
Mm.
type of work, as you're saying, drivers, specialized machine operators, they rely more and more on information that is streamed to them in real time or quasi real time, where they need to get their orders through email or other, mobile or electronic means. So yeah, I would say all of us to one or another degree, and to a high degree, are information workers. So this is applicable to all of us, indeed.
Oh yeah. And the topic of today, actually, it is connected with one part of this, right? But it's still connected with who is dealing a lot with that part of information that goes through email and inbox, right? So we talk about going beyond it. No, so getting beyond email is perhaps for somebody is a challenge, for someone is not a problem. How is it for you?
I would say now it is not a problem. I would say email is not a problem. I could even say email is my friend, because I have tamed it. I think I would like to think,
Mm-hmm.
but for many years it was a source of stress. And when it gets out of control at some points, like I'm thinking a situation last week when I was overwhelmed with notifications because of something really urgent that I was expecting updates on, and overlooked some other key element because of
Mm-hmm.
my email configuration, the notifications, etc., etc. So I would say all in all, and by and large, I have a good relationship now with email, but I am more effective because I've been able to go beyond email and use other tools and other ways to work and communicate. So I would say, yeah, still using it, and but for a significantly less portion of what I do.
Mm-hmm. So basically, that means, if I understand correctly, you still consider it as a viable channel, nothing to remove from that, but going beyond means using different channels for other kind of communication. Something like you reduce the traffic into your inbox towards other channels. Am I right?
Totally right. Totally
Okay.
right. And the example I was alluding to last week is one of the uses that make me keep email, which is communicating with external entities. They select email as their way of communicating because it's contract related, and they need timestamp and they need proof of record. So in that regard, yeah, I need to use email. Yeah, so it's got specific uses now. Before it was the default tool. I would say now is the
Mhm.
exception for me.
Ah, so let's say, even who went fully no email, I think there are still some use cases where 100% no email is impossible. For example, you need to subscribe to a new website. You cannot avoid to put your email address, right?
Exactly.
You need to, I don't know, there is that particular process in your organization that requires you to send an email because there is a special task ID, or there are auditors that require that in the task procedure. So you cannot get out of this, and it wouldn't make sense, right? But those are so
Exactly.
little use cases, so few, that the big mountains of communication that we get um, doesn't have actually to get through the channel. So how do you get beyond email? Or what are actually maybe the main principle to follow?
So I can give my principles and see if they are useful for anybody or someone else. Um, as I was saying, email in my case was the default communication system before, and now it is no longer the default communication system. My default system is uh, it's more and more, by the way, integrated sets of tools, right? That give you uh, instant messaging capabilities, persistent conversation thread capabilities, um, meetings, audio, video, on the spot or scheduled. So those are that's really my main tool. I mean, being in Microsoft has, when I was working for IBM and I know of other companies, they do have their integrated suites of tools. So you basically work in that environment where you have the company directory, you have your favorite people that you talk to. So it revolves around relationships and conversations, right? So it's rather than email, which I mean can be organized like that, but it's not necessarily native like that. These other systems are focused on relationships and conversations, right? So I go there first, and I choose to, let's say, maybe instant message to certain individuals at certain times. Like I can communicate with my boss at the beginning and end of the day through instant message, very quick, conversations to the point. um, some other guys, I may organize meetings. Like most of them are virtual meetings, right? So, through the scheduler and meetings tool, I will go and have meetings, and without touching email. This everything in the tool, and this pervasive across devices, mobile phones, tablets, etc. So that's what I use 90% of the time.
Well, I think it goes back to the origins, and that's what I like of going beyond. So it's a step back towards people. My experience, many years of getting out of emails, right, so working without, was really connected with talking more, getting more onto a direct connection and discussion, instead of making it indirect as email is, where we tendentially write something that is indirect, time delayed, hard to interpret, and since everybody gets into that channel, there is a big bottleneck. So where even clear messages become unclear because you never have the right time and attention to pay to read it.
Exactly.
While people is like when you're in front of someone, it's much easier just have that person to talk to, and you can solve what you need to solve actually straight away. That's actually also instant messaging, virtual
Yeah.
communication, and so on.
Yeah. In my experience, many of my messages were quick exchanges, dialogues, question answer, question answer, updates, or and you tend to actually, one of the things I do now is I tend to use my phone for email. And why is that? Because that forces me to be more succinct and write less,
Okay.
right? And it's hard to edit. It's hard to copy a lot of people because you need to look for them. So you see, I'm trying to minimize the length and the number of people that I send my emails to, because I see that works for me in reducing my own traffic.
Oh, yeah. You want to reduce weight, you just don't feel the fridge, right?
Exactly.
That's actually the
Exactly.
same principle. Oh yeah, that's cool. It's an interesting hint to make it at least force yourself as well. If mentally we are not able to do it, even in front of a keyboard, at least, you know, device might help. But one thing I don't know. Now you went from IBM to Microsoft, so I suppose you've still found several of your colleagues that are mostly using emails, right?
Yes.
And why is it that? Why? That's actually the question. Why they're not, you know, getting beyond that? Why it's still not getting to people directly, as we were discussing?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, we mentioned prior in this discussion, there are a lot of systems of record and systems of authentication and identity and system for spinning up applications and permissions that rely on your email address. So, I mean, you have to have an email address, you have to be in the system. You don't have to use it because, as I said, you know, the scheduling function you have elsewhere, the conversation function you have elsewhere and better. But so I would say as a legacy process element, it is there. So I would say it's fitted in every laptop, provided for everybody, and you use it. But I would say I saw in IBM and I see it in Microsoft. There's a huge migration of people's, I would say, time utilization away from email. That I do see. I mean, email is not the primary tool. I mean, it's extensively used, but as I was saying, in my own example, it's just 10% of my communication workload. I would say 10%. So and that's consistent across, I would say, the organization at large. So maybe it's not 10% for everyone, but I would say not bigger than 30%. I would venture to say.
So already there is some movement
Oh yeah.
of communication, and that's perhaps from a certain, I don't know, I have this feeling that you can move to another channel, but you should also move inside. Let's say, like, to
Yeah.
not make it too much philosophical, but it's a behavioral based change. It's not only a tool change, right? Well, if you move
Exactly.
from email to like, you know, conversation to like Slack, for example, or Trello, but you still are far away from people, you just send the message, right? And or long messages, and still you expect folks to execute or interpret it and so on. You still get away from the, you know, open collaboration instead that
Exactly.
this tool offer.
Exactly. I see that, Lele. I see that you cannot really change because email and the tools, those are an expression of ways of working, and in the end, it's organization and culture. You cannot you cannot change culture or ways of working just by changing behavior or forcing behavior changes. You need to have a change in mindset, as you were saying. So we're collaborating across teams. We don't have silos. There's much more empowerment. So it's a whole different way of working, a whole different mindset, actually, as you were saying. So and that is necessary. Otherwise, we're just moving the inefficiencies from one tool onto the other, more modern whatever tools, but it's not going to work. You need to think and work differently and expect differently. I fully agree. Really.
So some tools you might recommend or that you use on your daily basis to get beyond that
Sure,
inbox.
sure. So, you know, in Microsoft, now we use, it's very effective in my opinion. So there's Microsoft Teams application, which incorporates, I think it's portrayed as a competitor to other tools in the market, like Slack, for example.
But that is different than there is also Cisco Teams, right? Cisco WebEx Teams that is very similar.
Probably
There is Slack, there is Microsoft Teams.
Trello.
So it is, but it's conversation, right? It's like where instead of the instant messaging, or it is instant messaging with also group conversation.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. You have to me the beauty of it is, I mean, there's a little bit of a learning curve as well, but not too steep, I would say. And you have those functionalities I was talking about. So you have instant messaging, either one to one, or you can add people to the message
Mm-hmm.
at any point, to
Mm-hmm.
add people to the conversation. Then there's got persistent conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you write something, somebody replies over, maybe overnight, you pick it up in the morning, somebody sends a file or a link to a file. So it also has the function of information repository or a link to
Mm-hmm.
information repositories, actually much more effective, right? Because you don't overload the system with files, and then you have the issue of version control, etc.
Yeah.
But you can link to the sources. So that's another function. You can also schedule meetings and conversations, schedule activity, and many other things. So it's got
Set up
all those elements.
reminders, right? As well, I think you can do all this
Exactly,
kind of things.
for you and for others. So it's even, you can configure it or use it as a workflow system, very simple. But I would say its main strength is the conversation element that you have, that you think, first of all, you think in people
Mm-hmm.
that you deal with, and then you think in projects that you're involved with, and the system itself organizes information very conveniently across those two dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
peoples and projects, and you have the repositories, and you have all sorts of value add elements, like, obviously when you have an organization communicating like that, there are statistics about how people are using it, who your top collaborators are, if you're using all of your time
Yeah.
working, or if you have save time that you have for thinking, or so there are components there of feedback loops into your own ways of working and your own effectiveness. So I like it very much.
And I think it's also it is a way to not only to overcome the instant messaging, because it's many instant messaging now are like this asynchronous, that is very good, but at the same time it's putting together other tools, right? So it becomes like the platform where you can import a file from another source. You
Yes.
can work together with Trello together with Teams, because maybe you import it, so you open a board on Trello and then the notification is sent automatically. So this kind of synergy between various tools that makes this also a plus.
Yeah.
But the
And I
hard
think,
part is, from who is using the inbox. So that's also my thought around, who's in the inbox is used to get everything into the inbox, right? And then they're folding. There is the folder that puts a lot of messages, and in order to have the inbox very free. There is who is using a lot of drafts, and then going back to the draft for using the notes, who has a lot of tabs open and so on. At the same way, these kind of tools work in this way, but you need, I think, a little bit of time to learn how to save a favorite, how to set a reminder, how to get that notification you want to. Otherwise, of
yeah,
course, it's going to be a mess.
it is actually, yeah, it can be a mess because they are by default. Also, there's this other topic of notifications. These new systems, they also send you notifications. They send you reminders for meetings, or they send you, maybe you're tracking somebody, or right, waiting for them
Mm.
to come online.
Yeah.
So when they come online, depending on your notifications, it may start sending you emails saying, hey, your colleague has come online, or your colleague wrote something, right, if they
Yeah.
mention. So yeah, I would say there's good hygiene education as well, to kind of decouple these systems from email, so that you don't get, again, overloaded in your email that you're abandoning or moving away from. and that you are not overloaded by the system itself, sending you notifications to your mobile. And
Yeah.
some of them, then that's a typical, like for example, I work in mission critical. If you get like hundreds of notifications, big and small, they will inevitably mask something big, and you're going
Yeah.
to miss it eventually. So you're going to have,
And you
you're
need
going to have
actually to see that one, not all the
exactly.
daily messages that that there is time for priority low, and then there is time for high priority.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. And when you set up your notification, you set up your desktop. Um, uh, you what are you actually set up your conversation that is Teams, right? What are the other tools you are using to complete this conversational main tool, let's say?
So as you may imagine, there are information repositories, right? That's another thing, and another change in mindset. There are organizations that are more used to collaborative working. For example, collaborative editing of a document, right? And there are ways to technically do that, but somebody's working on a document, and you can be working on the same document at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Making edits. So I'm bringing that up to illustrate the other tools that accompany these types of systems because of the change in mindset. So it's um, online collaboration tools, common repositories of information that you can reference by link, and rather than having to send the full file every time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that also creates issues with version control, etc., etc. If
Mm-hmm.
you reference the original source that's version controlled, then things work much
Mm-hmm.
better, right? So those are the other systems. So information repositories, um, business intelligence. So systems where you can um, build dashboards and reports, etc., etc. So
Mm-hmm.
typically those are around all of these systems and the information repositories.
Hmm. I would also add that one of the main tools is make sure that you always have your favorite video communication tool, right? That's also to have it. That is actually is not a secondary matter, because I saw even in an IT company there are people that they don't even know they have a camera on their laptop, or they never used it. Or anytime you
Right.
start a call with different kind of tools, I don't know, you use Zoom, then you use WebEx, then you use Skype, and you change tool and the next tool doesn't work, right? But the reality is that nowadays we cannot actually get only on one, hoping that everybody uses the same. We should actually be so flexible to at least have set up all the main tools and be ready actually to set up a new one. At the end, they're all working the same way. And also to have the setup that is like the camera, the microphone that works very well, headset like you have, to be ready for that kind of conversation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's also a change that I've seen, certainly in my former organization, in my current organization, and in general life. We use video communication increasingly, and
yeah,
it's great. It's great. So, and I fully subscribe what you're saying, that you use. Maybe you have, like in my current company, we do have a tool for all of work related um, communication needs,
yeah,
right? But then if you're communicating with an external organization, like
you
for
never
example,
know.
yeah, they use WebEx in many cases, right? So you need to have it as well, or you need to have Zoom for those who use Zoom. And so definitely, and it needs to be um, accepted and recognized. Obviously, depending on the topic and the matter, there will be constraints and conditions for which tool to use. And you must be, and that's down to the individual to exert good judgment, right? But I think that's part of the information education.
So last question, Alfonso. So we discussed we need to go beyond inbox, right? So bringing a big conversational tool, bringing make sure that we have all the kind of information repository tools or blogs or business intelligence tool with reports. Having ready to have a nice instant messaging application, can be also be Messenger or WhatsApp, right? It doesn't have to be, but make sure that you know what you can use. Bring a video communication tool, right? So now I'm just on the inbox. It's so nice and simple. I get thousands of emails every day. I get mad with it, but I just have that inbox. And now you tell me you need to install a lot of tools to have the video, to have the things. How is this reducing my information overload?
That's a great point, Lele. And whoever thought it was going to be easy, it's not easy. And I would say with increased freedom, and this is what it is. We have increased freedom. We don't just have one system, and by default, as it was email. Now we need to develop specific skills, and I found myself kind of developing them and continually updating and upgrading them, and develop good judgment above all, because this is not a problem that you solve technically. It's about being able to prioritize. It's about being able to identify which is the critical information for you, for your work, and how to filter everything else. So it's about critical judgment. It's about the ability to focus, which in turn is directly dependent on, do you know what your priorities are, your real priorities and your real object. So you see, it goes totally deep into what's the purpose of my work, what are my immediate goals, who I need to collaborate with for achieving those, and what sorts of information I need to get through to me, right? Everything else is noise, or not related to the main goal, and therefore I should reject or postpone, right? But as you're saying, it introduces workload, at least it does for me, on a different level. But I find that if I do it once and for all, at least for quite some time, for a few months, I'm good. I just need to think hard about how I'm going to do it. I need to train myself, etc., and then it works great for me. Eventually things go out of control, and I need to go back, and reset my thinking or my tools or my notifications. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's less work. Certainly it's less stress for me. I feel less stressed, but that may depend also in person to person. And I think I'm more effective now, definitely. And I work faster in a much better way. And organizationally, I see across teams, I see the benefits. I really think we're getting much more done and much more effectively. But it's hard work. Yeah, that's true.
Because there is a lot of coming back by getting more towards people, like in networking, in empathy, understanding, in making more friends beyond you. Instead, before it's so email signature that was the closest thing to friendship you got, and now instead you meet more often, you talk more often. So at the same time, you still do the things, so that's positive. But I think what is also very important to know is this kind of healthy um, ordering of our virtual room to define our notification flow, define specific time a day where we see certain kind of tools, to be this kind of discipline helps you out a lot, right? If we are only there waiting for the next ding, then we didn't change so much into our own overload, right?
That's the difference I see, Lele. Again, you're touching obviously on critical points. Is taking personal responsibility and being in charge rather than being a passive subject. right? So if you're just waiting for your inbox to fill up and give you the next item to work on, that's passive. If you're on top of things and driving them, that's an active position. So definitely, yes.
Oh yeah, and at the end of this, I would say people might still feel overwhelmed at the beginning before the setup when you know a new tool, but after that, it's gonna be a different feeling, perhaps. And one thing I figured out, at least, is that all the tools are almost the same. I mean, unfortunately for, I know that there are various branding behind and there are tools with different features and so on, but the basic working behind this kind of engine and how intuitively you should click here and there, they are very, very, very similar. So it's really up to experimenting for like 10 minutes at the beginning to see, okay, how it works. And then the next tool is going to be not so I'm totally confident that if I get to Microsoft Teams, I'm not going to find so many differences than the additional 3 tools I've been using so far. It's maybe different
Exactly.
graphic,
I would
different
say,
colors, but yeah.
yeah, I think the individually all tools and have the similar functionalities. So if you learn one, that's also a good thing. You learn one, and you can translate your experience and transpose it
Yeah.
across platforms. I would say, obviously, what differentiates a set of tools from another, in my opinion and in my experience, is how well they are integrated between themselves and with other tools. So the integration across devices and with your ways of working, etc. I think that is the differentiator. But if you address them one by one individually, it's, as you say, they're non-differentiated there. Differentiation comes at an integration level.
Oh yeah. So let's go all beyond email, right? Is that the wish?
Yeah, I think it's doable, it's healthy, and I think it's necessary for most. I'm not, maybe there are professions and positions that require extensive email, but I would say, by and large, I think we can move beyond email and just keep it for a limited set of purposes.
Yeah, and for everybody that is watching us and would really like to share that it's impossible to go beyond email, or in their own environment they cannot, I really would like to have the conversation with you. I would really like to know where it blocks, where is the real issue. Is it in communication? Is it in process? Is it in people? So where is email, blocking us towards what can be the real kind of interaction between human beings that are working, and where you can actually tackle the overload in letting it flow in a different direction, or maybe control it better. So that's an
Yeah.
invitation for everyone. Alfonso, anything else we should point out or discuss today?
No, I think we touched on a few very interesting topics, and this is a journey, and I think
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's a matter of really knowing your priorities and being effective, and it's not technology, it's more and more ourselves, and it's more and more human interaction and how we work better together. So yeah, I think we covered a lot today, Lele.
Oh yeah. So thank you for watching to everyone, and thank you, Alfonso, for sharing your experience and a lot of hints and what actually I feel everybody could start doing right now. So there is nothing to wait for. There is nothing that is gonna change. Actually, everything is gonna change much more frequently in the next years. So the sooner you start getting beyond one common tool that is 40 plus years old, the better it is also for you as a professional. So good luck with that, and
I
thank you for
agree.
watching.